Jojo is a series I never grew up with. It wasn't until I was around 15 when I first started watching it, and I only got around to finishing it last year. Fair billing is Poochie, by the way. And at the start of this year, I got around to reading part 7 with some friends, and it was easily my second favorite right behind 6. However, there was one arc in this story that stuck with me more than any other arc in any other story, this being the True Man's World, an arc that's pretty early on in the part and fairly short, but the message this part tells the reader and the result it has on the rest of the story are some of the most interesting things for me in JoJo as a whole. So let's try to understand and break down this part and figure out what the message it's trying to tell us means.
Tell him to go eat shit, Johnny.
Tell him yourself.
Eat shit, asshole! Fall off your horse!
Well, this arc begins with Hot Pants, Johnny, and Gyro getting trapped in a forest. But the first moment we see that shows us the message of the arc is when Gauge, another member competing in the race, who is also being trapped in the area, has a standoff with Ringo Again, the main villain of the small arc. Now in the standoff, we get to see the beginning of an understanding of Ringo's character. First off, he's shaking out of fear, or perhaps it's his body overstraining himself. He also gives Gauge advice about his gun, where he can move and where he can be so that his shots will land. Which brings up our first questions. Why did he do that? Why did he give his opponent the same information he knew? Many other characters in our main group wouldn't have done the same in that situation. So why did Ringo? Well, to understand his actions, you first need to understand the True Man's World philosophy, what it means and what it represents. The philosophy at its core is the idea that through putting yourself through an action where societal norms cannot restrict you, that you can find the person you truly are, since the you in that very moment is no longer hiding behind a mask of protection or shame. You're purely yourself. And Ringo himself is able to see when there are other characters who are like him. Those who, when given a chance to be in a situation to release themselves from society's chains, they will do so in an instant. And someone he points out who isn't like him is Gyro. This is the first main part of the arc, where we learn about what those chains are. The best example is Gyro himself. You see, Gyro's had a hard life, just like Johnny. But where Johnny's injuries shaped him to have the desire to kill, to survive, to have the willingness to improve himself through even the most brutal of ways, Gyro was still following his father's path, tracking his steps. Even Johnny points this out. He simply has no self-hunger. The actions he performs are for his father and not his own, which is why he's labeled a conformist. The next part we get to see is when Gyro and Ringo have their first duel, and Gyro loses everything. This part of the story is showing us what happens when you hold yourself back with those chains. When Gyro worked with his father, he never killed anyone with killing intent. He simply did it because it was his job. And that's exactly how he treats Ringo, and exactly why he loses. He doesn't commit to the action. He doesn't treat that if even for a moment he hesitates, he is dead. And as a cost for his mistake, he loses Johnny, showing that if you can't put your everything into protection and desire, every fight you're in is as good as lost. Now the last part of this arc is the final duel in Ringo's house. This is where we learn what it means to reach the True Man's World. In their final duel, Gyros finally gives everything into his duel, killing for the sake of survival, not because he's carrying someone else's will or it's his job. No, he does it so he can survive and he can get stronger, moving past the person he was moments ago and be the person he needs to be in the next moment, and the moment after that, and so on. Although Ringo is an extremist, his ideals at their core represent something deeply human. When he was young, he was born very weak, and as a result, he was pampered for most of his younger years. But one day a man tried to assault him in his sleep, and he worked through his sickness, breaking his limits, and killed the man, saving himself and surpassing the person he was a moment ago, reaching the True Man's World for the very first time. This changed him for the rest of his life. He devoted himself to reaching that world as often as possible, making himself discover more and more about the person he was, desiring to become the true version of himself through the only way he had learned how: duels, where the battle is completely even. No advantage, no disadvantages. Everyone understands the other situations and abilities, and anyone can win if they just hunger for it. Now, although his ideals are corrupted, in a way, it's rather pure. What the True Man's World is the state you're in when you're so committed to something that you stop doing things you unconsciously do to hold yourself back. Whether it's out of shame or fear, you arrive in the true man's world when you finally let yourself be truly you. Hello everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. This one was quite different from my usual stuff, but this arc has stayed with me since I read it, and I really wanted to talk about it with you guys. Also, thank you so much for 500 subscribers. I still haven't fully come to terms with this, but trust me, more stuff is on the way. So stay tuned till next time. Bye.